One of the fastest growing companies in our portfolio is a company that uses robotics to grow worms in vertical farms. As of 2022, they will be the world's largest producer of worms. And so you say, why would I care about that? One of the problems in the world is protein sustainability. And so what worms are able to do is become a protein source for fish. So in the wild, about 15% of all input that a fish takes is insects. But now more than 50% of fish are grown in fish farms, and they were getting zero insects. And so we were depleting the world's supply of things like anchovies to feed fish. So they started feeding fish carbohydrates, so wheat products. And it turns out that fish mortality goes up because they don't all digest wheat. And so they started giving hormones and amino acids and antibiotics to then prevent inflammation from hormones. And we were creating an industrial system similar to what we did with, cows and chickens in this country. And so this entrepreneur said, I think I can solve that problem if I can grow insects at scale. And so he tried 100 different types of insects. It turns out some that sound like a good idea, like grasshoppers, crickets and the like, you can't grow in really close quarters because they become cannibalistic when you do. So he had to cycle through a bunch of insect types. He settled on this type of worm. It's called a mealworm. And they could mass produce the larva. But what they do is think of stacked trays that go really high and robotic arms that lift the stack, drop in feed, drop the stack, pick the next thing up in the stack and drop the feed, and they go up and down. Then periodically they pull out a tray, flip it over a sieve, get all the manure out and put the worms back. The manure makes about 60% of our total volume of what we create, and we sell it as an organic fertilizer. At maturation, the worms are crushed. You take the liquid byproduct, and it becomes an input into pet food to make dry kibbles water soluble. And there already are products that do that. They typically come from poultry, but we're a perfect substitute for that. The most value is the dry cake powder. And that then becomes an input for fish food. And it turns out we did a 3.5-year study to prove that we could reduce fish mortality and not impact the taste of fish. Suddenly, we have so much demand, we can't even produce enough worms. As I said, we're building the world's largest factory to produce worms now. And we went from zero to $100 million in bookings in 1 year.
Fantastic. That is extraordinary. Just think about all the problems we have. And you think about how lucky we are to be capital allocators and to work with these amazing founders. I am so positive, and I know you are too, about we can solve every problem if we have amazing entrepreneurs who are properly incentivized and are given the capital. And if we have the will as a society to actually deploy these exciting things. And it really is about willpower. We can correct, I believe, and I'm curious of your answer, I believe we can cure and reverse, in fact, global warming.
It's a complicated topic. I can't recommend highly enough to every reader, if you care about sustainability of the planet, to read a book called Collapse. And it's written by one of my favorite authors in the world, Jared Diamond. And Jared Diamond won the Pulitzer Prize for his amazing book called Guns, Germs, and Steel. So Collapse studies societies around the world that collapse. And why do they collapse? And like Guns, Germs, and Steel, he says, here's the proximate causes. So the proximate causes of why the West conquered the rest were guns, germs, and steel. But he says, but someone needs to ask, why did the West get guns, germs, and steel? So that's the whole premise of that book. The premise of Collapse is we know the proximate cause of why societies collapse is war.
Yep.
Or famine.
Yep.
Or some sort of catastrophic event like water being reduced.
Overpopulation, yeah.
But then he says, what causes that? And he goes back upstream to say, what causes, why? Like he looked, for example, at Rwanda and why was there genocide in Rwanda? And it came down to agriculture because they were subdividing the land so much. And every subdivision went from father to son, and it usually went to firstborn son. And they would subdivide and subdivide and subdivide the land as population grew to a point where they could no longer hand out land to their offspring. and they had a limitation on the number of acres of farmable land, and it started leading to civil conflict. So he goes back up to looking at things like agriculture. And one thing he studied was Easter Island, the Moab. And why did Easter Island collapse? So Easter Island went from this really religious place that had gods and norms and rules, and then over time they became cannibals and killed each other and ate each other. And see what led to that. And what they did is they studied the diets of the middens they studied the middens to determine the diets of what people ate. And what they figured out was the first thing they do is they cut down all the trees. And once they cut down all the trees, they no longer had fish in their diet because they no longer could build boats to have fish.
Oh my God.
And so their calories were reduced, and therefore their output was reduced, and therefore they led to civil conflict, and their entire religion was wiped out, and they became cannibalistic. And so anyway, this book, it's a wonderful book. And he basically says that oh, you did. Okay. So he a theory called Malthusian theory, which is the more you produce in agriculture and output, the more population will grow to fill. That's the Malthusian theory.
It's induced traffic. You build more roads, people travel more.
Exactly. But what he said is you need a combination of technology, but you need societal change. You need people wanting to consume less. And I think that's the other area. And that's what gives me great hope about Gen Z and people coming behind Gen Z is they're growing up with a culture of wanting to drive electric cars, wanting to consume less, wanting to have lower carbon footprint, wanting to find ways to not have to import their products from around the world that has carbon emissions and wanting less. And I think that's got to be the world we live in the future.
Listen, as a founder, sometimes finishing a project is way, way harder than starting it. Starting is easy, finishing is hard. Shiny new ideas are great. You have them all the time. And sometimes you and your team don't have enough bandwidth to finish the mission. And that's where Fiverr comes in. They fix the issue by creating Fiverr Business, Fiverr. Fiverr Business will get you access to an all-star team of freelancers, plus all the tools and support you need to easily integrate them into your existing workflow. There's no more guessing. There's no more interviews. Fiverr's team of dedicated business success managers will help match you with the best talent for your team. In other words, they got a manager of the talent over there doing what I was doing. How brilliant is that? And you will be able to save and share your favorite freelancers for future projects all in one simple dashboard. We love it here. We've hired a bunch of researchers to find local people to invite to our event. Boom, Fiverr got it done for us. They deliver us the goods. The event was a success. Stop wasting time searching for talent and just leave it to Fiverr Business. They do a great job. Right now, you can sign up for free. That's right, free for the first year. And you save 10% on your purchases of Fiverr Business with the promo code Jason. That's right. The promo code is Jason. Just go to fiverr.com/business and use the promo code Jason to get 10% off. Fiverr.com/business.